Before the Chair formally starts proceedings, can we just run through... Over.
The meeting. Sorry? So, as you will be aware, last week our colleague Councillor Kevin Thurland passed away following a short illness. His death was a great shock to his family, friends and colleagues. Kevin was a much liked and respected member of the council, and prior to being elected last year was a community champion in Kettering. Most of you would have know, his funeral was this morning and it was packed. There wasn't a spare seat in the creme. I'm sure that council will share with me this great sadness in his passing and extend our deepest condolences to his wife Leslie and their family and friends. I would now invite councillors, officers and guests to join me in a 2-minute silence in his memory. Paul, if you could time it. Colleagues, still in relation to Kevin, is there any member of the council would like to speak to this, please? Councillor McGee.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's only correct that we recognise the passion of Councillor Thurland. I think anybody that gives up time in their communities, whether that's been a councillor or a community champion, should be recognised, and I know, and I've heard so much about what he did in Kettering. So on behalf of the Labour Group and myself, Chair, we would like to pass on our sincere condolences to his wife, his family and his friends.
Anybody else, please, colleagues? Councillor Smithers?
Thank you, Chairman. And I just want to echo your comments today, just earlier about Kevin. Having attended his funeral this morning, you could see how popular the chap was locally and amongst councillors, friends and people around Kettering. You know, my relationship with Kevin was very short because he became a newly elected North Northamptonshire councillor on Vesting Day. And, you know, he was always a very cheerful chap. You know, when he'd ring up, he was always a bit of a ray of sunshine, and it was always good to talk to him. And he always fought very hard for his residents that he represented in Kettering. So I'm very sad of his passing, and my thoughts and condolences go to his family at this difficult time.
Councillor Haycor, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Just like to add exactly and support those comments from the Green Alliance group. He was a lovely person and sadly missed by not only family, friends, but also council colleagues. But just like to associate ourselves with those comments, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor. Welcome, Barbara. You made the start of the meeting. Thank you, councillors. I'd now like to formally open the meeting. Are there any apologies for absence, please? Councillor David Brackenbury.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. For the Conservative group, we have apologies from Councillor Rowley, Councillor Deering, Councillor Sedwin Brown, Councillor Stephen North, Councillor Sims, Councillor Smythe, Councillor Lavelle, Councillor O'Hara, Councillor Bone and Councillor Irwin. That's for the Conservative group. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Matt Keane, please.
Thank you, Chair. On behalf of the Labour Group, we have apologies from Councillor Simon Riley and Councillor Anne Lee.
Councillor Emily Fedorovich, please.
For the Green Alliance Group, we've got apologies from Councillor Fedorovich.
Okay, thank you. Paul Galt, is there any apologies?
I have no additional apologies, Chair.
Are there anybody else got apologies for anybody? Thank you. The next item is the minutes of the meeting held on the 29th of September 2022. Are there any issues in relation to the accuracy of the minutes?
Thank you, Chair. I've been put on notice that unfortunately, and apologies to Councillor Jackson, he was not recorded as attending, so that will be amended.
Councillor Carr, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just one slight observation, page 9, paragraph starting with Councillor Hakewell. What I actually said was training had already been agreed by the planning officers for town and parish councillors, rather than what was stated there, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor. Anybody else? No, I would like to move the minutes of the 29th of September. Please may I see a seconder? Councillor Hakewell, thank you. Please may I see those in favour of the minutes? Yep.
We're going to ask Ben to test the system.
Oh.
So can I just interrupt?
Yeah, we'll now, first of all, test the system, please, Ben.
Okay, councillors, for those of you who arrived shortly before the meeting, we are now using electronic voting from this meeting onwards, and we will provide 30 seconds in which to vote, and we will give you a 10-second warning before the vote closes. You will see on your screens, on your microphone units, the ability to vote yes, abstain or no for each vote, and you will just press the button, the corresponding button, and there'll be a little vibration to give you some feedback. If you vote incorrectly during those 30 seconds, you can revise your vote. But once the 30 seconds are up and we have closed the vote, you will see a padlock appear which closes the vote. The voting result will appear and the chair will then confirm the vote before moving on. So, without further ado, I shall put in place the first vote. And that vote is commencing now.
Before we press, anybody got any questions, please? No? Okay, please vote.
Okay, you have 10 seconds left.
Michael Tighe.
Okay, and the vote is now closed.
So, yes, thank you, councillors. That's carried. Please, declarations of interest. Sorry. Chia.
Chair, if you've got any issues, what I would suggest is there a member of Democratic Services that could go and help those members who just struggled with that? If you just raise your hands for a few minutes whilst the meeting continues.
Yeah, thank you. Any declarations of interest, councillors, please? Relating to the item to be discussed. No? Agenda item 4, councillors. Chair's announcements. On Saturday evening, I'm using some of my empowerment to fund the Kettering Symphony Orchestra, which is at the Citadel Salvation Army on Saturday evening at 7:30. There are still tickets available, I believe, online, and they're going to be playing, and it's a big orchestra, themes from all the big films. And I can assure you it'll be a great evening. I think the tickets are about 11 quid each, but don't say you didn't know. Okay, thank you. The other thing is, my late wife, when she was mayor about 12 years ago, had some ties with the Kettering crest on them. And I've got about 30 ties left here from those days, and I'm desperately clearing things out. If anybody would like one, please put your hand up. I haven't got any in green and yellow, I'm afraid, but I've got red and blue. Councillor Jelly, what you a couple of red ones? We'll give them at the end. I've got a bag full here, but I'll make sure you've got one. You're definitely in, and anybody else who wants one, just see me afterwards. I've got to get rid of them. That's all from me. Well, I've had quite a busy month. I think that everybody's clearing the decks ready for Christmas. I did 4 award ceremonies in 4 nights, and well received at all of them. I thought the one at the university would never end. They seem to be lined round the building, but it was a great lunch as well. Please may I see the Leader of the Council to make a brief announcement.
There is no brief announcement, Mr. Councillor Henson, but thank you anyway.
You sure? Thank you, Leader. There are no public statements, public questions or petitions on this occasion. Please may I see, agenda item 7, please may I see Councillor Matt Binley, Executive Member, to make a brief statement. Councillor Binley, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to provide the Council with an update regarding the motion that was proposed and carried at the last full Council by Councillor Lynn Buckingham. The team have continued to work on looking at this area in regards to goodwill gestures, as they had been already. The team had been operating, and currently are, in two different ways, with the former Corby Borough Council area offering a payment of £2 per day, and the Kettering Borough Council area being completed on an ad hoc basis via the complaints process. These need to be harmonised, quite rightly, as were highlighted in that motion. It was proposed that a report be brought back at Council, either this one or the next one. However, I am very conscious of the fact that we are now in the colder months of the year. So I have made sure that we are in a position to move ahead with this now rather than wait. But a full report will be provided in January's full Council meeting. The team have worked tirelessly to review the energy efficiency of the temporary heaters provided to residents when they suffer boiler breakdowns, and they are unable to be fixed immediately. But this information is unavailable, as it is not a requirement to be provided by manufacturers, and therefore, unfortunately, we will not be able to provide this information. However, the team have finalised a standard operating procedure for the provision of goodwill gestures during the time that residents experience boiler outages. This will not require full Council approval, and this standard operating procedure will be implemented from the 1st of December this year. The standard operating procedure will operate from the 1st of November to the 30th of April every year, and this has been based on Met Office data from 1991 to 2020 and the average temperatures for this county. This data shows that the months selected are the coldest. Of course, from the information I have provided, we will not be backdating this process to include November of this year, and the SOP, the standard operating procedure that is, will be reviewed annually. This is based on the current cost of electricity and the amount consumed by the temporary heaters, and that is why a goodwill gesture payment will be made at a rate of £6 per calendar day that the boiler is down for a period of up to 14 days. After that time, for any boilers still out, the Council's complaints process would still apply. And that is, of course, if the tenant so wishes. This payment would equate to 2.75 hours worth of running costs for both electric heaters, but this does not factor in the fact that the resident would be saving money by not using their gas during that period. So that would also be able to be put towards costs of the electricity for running the electric heaters. We therefore deem that to be a reasonable and proportionate proposal, and this also would amount to a trebling of the previous payment awarded by the previous sovereign authority. As part of the goodwill gesture, the tenants would also be able to keep the electric heaters free of charge after their use is no longer required. We have gone a step further and have decided to offer the goodwill gesture to all tenants, rather than just the elderly, disabled and those with children under 5, as people in NNC's housing will be some of those hardest hit by the cost of living crisis. As previously explained, a more detailed report will be provided at the next full Council meeting in January, Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Now, this is not open to debate or questions, but Councillor Lynn Buckingham, I believe you've got a hand in this somewhere. If you would like to say a few words.
Good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to respond. And we welcome the work that the officers and Councillor Binley has put in on this. Could I please request a copy of the standard procedures? Is that possible? But very much welcome this, as will our tenants across the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Can we arrange that, please, Paul? Thank you. Agenda item 8, Youth Justices Plan 2022-3. Please may I see Councillor Scott Edwards to move this item, please.
Thank you, Chair. Northants Council has a statutory duty to publish an annual youth justice plan. This you will see in the appendix of the report. This has been placed before Northamptonshire's Youth Offending Service Management Board in August 2022, where it was approved. The Youth Offending Service is currently run by Northamptonshire's Children's Trust. In the report, you will see service development priorities, partnership priorities, and improving practice. And from that, you will see that strong working relationships, communication, and tools have increased. This includes the exploitation screening tool, which identifies risks of exploitation. In February of this year, it was identified that Northamptonshire would be classed as a Stage 1 priority. This was due to concerns relating to performance data and increases in serious violence. In response, the Northamptonshire Youth Offending Services Improvement Plan has focused on these areas. You will see in the report the contributions given by the statutory partners and the allocation from the Youth Justice Board. This Youth Justice Plan supports the priorities of Northamptonshire's Council and the vision that Northamptonshire is a place where everyone has the best opportunities and quality of life. The KPIs that are being focused on are reducing first-time entrance to the youth justice system, reduce reoffending, reduce use of custody, the number of young people in employment, training and education at the end of their order, and the number of young people in appropriate accommodation. You will notice in the report that the voice of the child is paramount, and these have been captured in assets and plans that have been increased using modern technology. Reoffending rates have declined and is currently sitting below the English average and the regional average. The reoffending frequency is slightly above the regional figure, but upon further analysis, this looks to be Northamptonshire's most prolific reoffenders are showing more activity. Education numbers have seen an increase, and the team have recently revised their plans to offer a more integrated approach. It's a joint aspiration that in the coming year, closer links with the SEND team will ensure a collaborative approach with the young person's voice central to any plan, and to ensure we have the right packages that will engage some of the most vulnerable people. The recommendation is for full council to approve the Youth Justice Plan.
Thank you, Councillor. Please may I see a seconder for this item, please? Thank you, Councillor. Would anybody like to speak on this subject, please? Councillor Maxwell, please.
The Youth Justice Service report is ongoing, and according to the report, we are reducing first-time entrances. However, we still need to do a lot more in creating areas where children can have access to activities. Sadly, this all costs money, and we now find that income is a factor. The National Foundation of Education states that poorer children are less likely to access these activities. We must make sure that money is available to do the extracurricular activities, for example, sports, swimming and other things. These children from poorer backgrounds are left out. Therefore, this increases the chance of criminal behaviour, which leads to the police being involved. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor John McGee, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm looking at the report on page 31, bullet point 10.1, serious youth crime. And it says they are dealing with engaging local partners to develop cross-partner initiatives, especially certain areas where there is serious crime. Chair, we know that myself, Councillor McGee and Councillor Kewan representing Kingswood, where unfortunately we've had a death, and just the other day, unfortunately, a very serious knife crime. I have heard nothing about these initiatives. Can the Cabinet member, the Executive member or the officer give me an example of some of them initiatives, please, and why we don't know about it as local ward councillors?
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Edwards, you heard what he said, but Is anybody else wish to speak to this item, please? Right. Councillor Edwards, please.
Thank you for the comments. And yeah, absolutely, Councillor McGee. In fact, I will send you the full items that are happening to stop this. But you are quite right that these crimes are increasing, perhaps the most horrific crimes that are increasing. And we will do everything with our partners to work with this. But I will write to you with the full reasons what is happening and keep everybody in the loop in future of what is happening.
Thank you, Councillor. We will now move to the vote on this, please.
Okay, so the vote will commence now, and you will have 30 seconds. Okay, there are 10 seconds remaining. And the vote is now closed.
That's carried. Thank you, councillors. Agenda item 9. The appointment of an independent person on the Audit and Governance Committee. Please may I see the monitoring officer to introduce this report, please.
Thank you, Chair. On behalf of the monitoring officer and before the Chair of Audit and Governance comes in, this is a procedural motion to ratify an independent person to sit on the Audit and Governance Committee, and full council consent is required. However, through the Chair, the Chair of the committee will give councillors more background.
Thank you, Paul. Please may I see Councillor Andrew Wetherall to move this item, please.
Thank you, Chair. Members, you'll have read the report authored by Adele Wiley in front of you regarding the ratification of the appointment of Michael Whitworth as the independent person to the North Northamptonshire Council Audit and Governance Committee. I recommend this appointment to North Northamptonshire Council members for approval. I'll be pleased to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Please may I look for a seconder for this item, please. Councillor Harrison.
Yeah, sorry. Go on. Okay. Yes, I'm happy to second this appointment, Mr. Chairman. The inclusion of independent member of audit committees is generally considered best practice and indeed in line with guidance from the Institute of Internal Auditors. Happy to answer any questions in addition to Councillor Wetherall.
Thank you, Councillor Harrison. Councillor Leanne Buckingham.
Well done. Thank you, Chair. I absolutely welcome an independent person to be sitting alongside us and helping making those decisions. How did this person come to be chosen? How do we recruit independent people? What's the process? Do they sign declarations of interest like we do? Yeah, great that we're having a person. If we were just saying a person, but we're saying this specific person. So, yeah, thank you.
Would anybody on the top table here like to answer that question?
Yeah, I'll say that. Thank you for that question. Well, this initially started within a skills-based assessment of what was deficient in the committee, and we identified a few areas. So then we went out with the assistance of officers, so we advertised initially on the web. We got a limited response from that, and then we further advertised on LinkedIn. And then we had a number of applicants and went through an interview process, and one was considered suitable. I think if you note from the documents, there's provision for 3, so we do still need to recruit a further 2, hopefully, and we'll have to think more imaginatively to get more responses. Yes, they will sign declarations in a similar manner that we do. I hope that's sufficient.
Thank you, Councillor. Sorry? Yeah, Councillor Griffiths, please.
Thank you, Mr Chairman, and my question was very much along the lines of Councillor Buckingham's. And I'm sure we have an excellent person here as the independent person. But in the report, the only recommendation, it seems, is that it's a local person. So what I would ask is that when it comes to full council with the other two suggestions, that we could have a little bit more about those individuals and what experience they have. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor John McGee, please.
Thank you, Chair. Using my past experience, Chair, can I ask that if any councillors or indeed senior officers have got a declaration if they know this person or not?
Councillor Witherell.
I don't know this person. I'm not aware that anybody else does. He was asked that in the interview, and don't think he knows any councillors.
As regards myself or the monitoring officer, we are not familiar with this person, and I should stress that the Section 151 officer was also involved in the interview process and can confirm that she is not aware of this, or was not aware of this person before the interview.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to speak to this motion, please? Can I just add something? Yeah, please.
Sorry, through the chair. Just to confirm to an earlier point I think Councillor Buckingham made, the independent person will be subject to the same rules as councillors in terms of conflicts of interest and register of interests. Obviously we won't be publishing their home address on the website, but we will make sure there is an address where they can be contacted should the members of the public wish to contact them direct for some reason.
Thank you. There appears to be no further speakers. We will now move to the vote, please.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, the vote is now commencing. There are 10 seconds left. Okay, and the vote is now closed.
Thank you, councillors. That is carried. Agenda item 10, colleagues. Northamptonshire Children's Trust Annual Report. Please may I see Councillor Scott Edwards to move this motion, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to add the following amendment to the recommendations, please. That this council note the gaps in sources of assurance as debated at the Audit and Governance Committee on the 5th of September 2022, and that the committee is seeking actions from the Northamptonshire Children's Trust to review their control processes and assurance framework and report back to the committee. So this report has been produced by the Northamptonshire Children's Trust within the timescales and requirements of the service delivery contract. The in-depth report includes such areas as the Trust's performance, costs for performing the service, the demand and expected demand, risks and many other areas. The KPIs are to be reviewed very shortly and some changes will be considered. The final detail of this will come after the release of the Ofsted report, which is published tomorrow. The cost of delivering the service is in Section 4, and the cost for 2021 to 2022 was £137.15 million, of which £60.74 million came from Northants. The Trust overspent by £3.7 million, which has been mitigated by £2.63 million worth of COVID funding. The remainder came from an underspend from creation of the Children's Trust. Assuring the Children's Trust is delivering to the agreed standards has been identified as a risk. The annual report allows the opportunity to scrutinise performance and mitigate against the risk, and I was pleased to see this report go to scrutiny and the executive. From the report, we can see the percentage of all referrals with a decision made within 2 working days remained above target. The percentage of single assessments authorised within 45 days never dipped below 97%. Care leavers in education, employment and training and the care leavers in suitable accommodation were above target and above the national average. And the percentage of social worker vacancies finished the year better than target and at the national average. Both adoption indicators improved in quarters 3 and 4. The percentage of qualified social workers with caseloads above targets has increased. There has been some positive signs, but recruitment of social workers remains a priority of the Trust. We as councillors act as corporate parents, and with this offer a range of services to our important care leavers. Although this does slightly differ across the two councils, the Corporate Parenting Board are looking at this to see what can be changed. North Northants Council commit to working with the Trust for any extra income through grant funding. Placements remain the biggest single risk and is incredibly volatile, with one placement costing alone £500,000. Children in care increased by 8% and forecasts that this will continue to grow. This will indeed put more pressure on the Children's Trust budget. We as a council are continuously looking at ways in supporting the Trust in getting the right outcomes for all of our children. Our property team are working on a review of the current buildings, and we continue to commit to supporting the Trust in applying any extra funding. The recommendation is to note the content of the annual report.
Thank you, Councillor. Please may I see a seconder for this item, please? Councillor Maxwell? Yep, accepted. Thank you.
I'm the seconder as well.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Would anybody like to speak to this item, please? Councillor Laura Lorne?
Thank you, Chairman.
Sorry, I thought you just wanted to second it. No, please go ahead and speak.
Yep,
Sorry.
okay. These children and young people in Northamptonshire experience poor outcomes. 28,876 children and young people live in the top 20% most deprived areas. Over 20,000 children 0 to 15 years live in low-income families, while 17,500 live out-of-work benefits households, and approximately 1,700 children, dependent children of all ages, live in households affected by the benefit cap. We need to look after what is said. I'm not sure that we can sign off, but we are now expecting the inspector's report, and I hope we can comment on this later. Some aspects of the comments about SEND and PIP, these need to be investigated, how we can move to change things in NNC. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Now, so far I've got two speakers, Councillor Laura Lorman and Councillor Leanne Buckingham. Laura Lorman, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm not trying to nitpick or anything of the sort, but may I refer you to page 63, at point 6.2, at the bottom line, where it says, we'll discuss any possible changes to the service delivery contract to be put in place from April 22. I'm sure that's supposed to read 23, please.
Thank you. Councillor Leanne Buckingham, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. I've got a few points to raise, please. One of them is looking at the KPI that identifies where we close cases within 12 months. I don't think this is a very good target for us to be aiming for, because what it means is we try to close things too soon, because we're seeing repeat entries into the service sitting rather high. It would be better, although I'm advised not to give advice, it would be better if we were to look at how quick was a action plan completed as opposed to how quick we close the case, because what we need to do is get the right care at the right time. My second point is on the percentage of qualified social workers. It's fantastic that we've hit our target. That's to be commended. However, if we look after the people, the mission will look after itself, and we need to make sure that although they are qualified, that they're getting the right support they need in the right time, that we're not overworking them and giving them too much to manage. And my third point is, I brought this up at the executive, on page 85, I think it's 19 of the report, there are certain places where we have audited, or forgive me, where the Children's Trust has audited themselves, which is fantastic. I did say at executive it's a shame only 4 had been completed, and I was told that actually 11 had been completed. If 11 had been completed, 11 would have been ragged. 11 would have told us what we needed to change to make sure it was right. So I'm going to say it again. It's a shame that not all 11 have been completed. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Now I've got 2 McGees. Councillor John McGee first, please.
Thank you, Chair. It's that age before beauty, I take it. Chair, couple of points. On page 71, we're halfway down at stage 2 investigations as a percentage, and we're taking away the KPI, the key performance indicator. Why would we do that? Make the life easier. They're there for a reason, KPIs. They're there to give us targets to ensure that we're doing the right job. Because it's difficult, you want to take it away. In my humble opinion, that should not be allowed, Chair. The other one, Chair, on the same 2.2, the percentage of qualified social workers with caseloads above targets. That's what happened, and some of you will remember this, at the old county council, and that's where we started to fail. That's not good enough, because what it does is put our social workers under pressure. They get stressed, they go off, and that puts more work on the ones that can do it. That's not good enough. We have to make that a priority, or we will end up back where we were years ago. Just because we have a trust doesn't mean it will do a better job than what an authority will do. And I'll raise one more thing if I can, Chair. It says, you mentioned about the budget last year and they brought that through reserves. Chair, we're forecast for a 12 million budget. That's not coming from reserves. I would like to know, whether it's through the executive or from the officers, what are the mitigations to bring that down? Because that share from this council will mean that we can't deliver other services. So that mitigation has to be there. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Zoe McGee, please.
Thank you, Chair. I have recently just started a new role at a charity that supports care leavers. Now, that charity came when the CEO realised that actually just over 50% of the under-25s prison population are care leavers. Now, I can't see in this report where Northamptonshire Children's Trust care leavers are, whether they're in the justice system, whether they are in prison, but I'd be really interested to know what our statistics are on that.
Any more speakers to this item, please? Councillor Pengelly.
Yes, Chair. I welcome this report, but I think it's well overdue. Just to let you know, Scrutiny Finance Committee are looking at this, and we will report back at the appropriate time. Having this report and the Ofsted report for us to look at as well will give us more information to look at this from top to bottom, and I welcome the executive asking us to look at this. I think we have to recognise the hard work of our officers and the officers at the Trust, and also all the people on the shop floor, as they call it, working day in, day out under extreme pressures. So thank you to them as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Wetherall, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to give some assurance to Councillor Buckingham, and she raised a very good point. What the Audit and Governance Committee did, and that we did some work on this on the 5th of September. We're very grateful that Anne-Marie Dodds, our Director of Children's Services, and Colin Foster, the Chief Executive of the Trust, and members of their team attended that committee, and they answered questions to us openly and honestly. As Councillor Edwards referred to, we focused on the sources of assurance there and the assurance framework, and in particular internal audit. And we raised a number of critical observations there. We're in between that last meeting and our next one, which is on Monday, but those minutes are out in the public arena. So that we are already looking at that and trying to work with the Trust to ensure that we get those sources of assurance that we require, because we felt there were some weaknesses there. And they tie in with what you were talking about in terms of the number of the audits done, when they commenced, how the programme was designed, how the follow-ups were done. So they were real concerns that we had, and we will be, I can assure you as an Audit and Governance Committee, we'll be keeping on top of those concerns. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Hakewell, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to congratulate Councillor Pengelly for his determination to make sure that we do get our fair share of Children's Trust scrutiny, which was laid down in the contract from November 20. So I appreciate his work in trying to get this scrutinised. I also appreciate that the Children's Trust, Colin Foster leading it, and others do come and answer the questions that we place. Chairman, we heard just in these last few days that both Kent County Council and Hampshire County Council are looking towards issuing Section 113 notices. And you, Chairman, will know that a 113 notice is where and when the County Council came to the point of failure, are issued to say we're basically not going to be able to meet the commitments from the income we have. And as Councillor McGee rightly says, and we both sat on the County Council, the Ofsted and the Children's Trust difficulties were one of the pivotal, but not the only one, pivotal reasons for the County Council overspending and throwing money at it. And I think the point to make here is that you don't solve this particular problem, which is inherent, was inherent previously and is inherent now, by simply throwing money towards it. I think, Chairman, that we are in local government in a parlous state in relation to social care, adults and children's, and as we scrutinise the Children's Trust, we should recognise that this is a national malaise, and it's not going to get any better, and I think we need to focus as much knowledge and intellect in this room and outside to try and understand how we do actually solve the issue of looking after those most vulnerable children for whom we are corporate parents. So I welcome it coming to full council. Thank Councillor Pengelly, thank Colin Foster for coming, but my goodness, there's a lot of work to be done on this particular area if we are to survive.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Jonathan Eakins, please.
Thank you, Chair. I think to be more precise, I'd like to ask, pointing to NCT self-evaluation, what I'd like to ask is what mechanisms are in place at NNC to ensure the Children's Trust is accountable for its spending, and including the considerations made for demand-led pressures. We here at NNC have to be very careful that we don't fall into the same hole that they did at Northamptonshire County Council with Children's Services, where they were just kept throwing money at a black hole without any accountability. And after all, yes, we have a responsibility, as Councillor Hakewell said, as corporate parents, all of us in this room are. However, we still have to be accountable for the public money that we spend to ensure that it's being spent in the correct manner and not just being wasted.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor David Brackenbury, please.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I echo what a number of colleagues have just said. We are corporate parents. So, children's services is not an area I have huge expertise in, but we are all corporate parents, so we all have to take this seriously. I do very much welcome this report because it gives us a good snapshot of what's gone well and what has gone less well in the Children's Trust. And I commend the work of Colin Foster and Anne-Marie Dodds and all their team, as well as officers in Northamptonshire who have worked so hard on this. It's vital that we keep adequate and constant governance, obviously on the finances, but so much of it is statutory and we have to do what we have to do. But we do have to make sure that the governance is correctly carried out. And let's just keep a close eye on it from Northamptonshire, from the mix of what goes on in the west, what goes on in the north, and to make sure that we look after the most vulnerable people, vulnerable young people in the area, and keep a close eye on how things are going. And for that reason, Chairman, I absolutely welcome this report, welcome the detail in this report, and will be very interested as it progresses. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Is there any other, before I come back to Councillor Edwards, as the mover, is there anybody else wish to speak to this, please? Councillor Edwards, please.
Thank you, Chair. And absolutely, finance is a huge issue with any area of the council, not just the Children's Trust. And I can assure everybody that this is fully scrutinised. And I know that Colin, who is, I think, upstairs actually in the audience now, will know that we go backwards and forwards with budget proposals and where we are with that. And that's still ongoing and will continue to be ongoing with our finance team and executive members throughout the year. So we are on top of that. In regarding to the social workers, absolutely. Social workers are the backbone of looking after our children and the welfare of our children. It is increasingly hard nationally to recruit social workers, but I think the Trust have done a good job in looking out of the box and trying to get social workers from other areas of the world to come in and work for our children. And Councillor Buckingham, you're absolutely right. You do need to look after the staff, enable to support the staff. And if you look at the questionnaire results that are actually in the report, you will see that staff are actually happier than they were before. Caseloads have increased, which is a concern, but we are working on that, or the Children's Trust is working on that as well. I think that is everybody. Yep, thank you.
Thank you. We will now, councillors, move to the vote.
Thank you, Chair. And the vote is commencing now. There are 10 seconds remaining. And the vote is now completed. Thank you.
That is carried, councillors, almost unanimously. We now move to agenda item 11, Council Tax Base 23 to 24. Please may I see Councillor Lloyd Bundy, please, to move this item.
Thank you, Chair. It's the statutory responsibility of the Council Tax Billing Authority to set the tax base for its area. The tax base isn't the exact number of properties within the area, but a notional figure if all properties were within Band D, and it takes into consideration factors such as growth and collectability. The resulting calculation equates to a Band D equivalent tax base of 116,019 properties before applying the expected collection rate of 98.5%, which reduces this to 114,279. The recommendation of paragraph 3 reflects this, which is an increase from the previous year of some 1,232 properties. I'm happy to propose this recommendation, Chair.
Thank you. Please may I look for a seconder to this item, please. Councillor David Jenny, please. Right, remain seated.
I'm going to stay seated. I'm very happy to second this proposal, Chairman. The tax calculation to get this is a very involved technical matter. It's very dry, and if anybody really does want to ask questions upon it, we could be here for a very long time. It is necessary as far as the funding and the tax base setting is concerned, so I would heartily recommend we take this. Thank you very much indeed.
Anybody wish to speak to this item, please, councillors? Councillor Lynn Buckingham, please.
Thank you, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. Given that we are in a cost of living crisis, how realistic is the assumption of a collection rate of 98.5%. I know that there has got to be an assumption, but just how realistic is that assumption given the problems that we face this year? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Anybody else wish to speak to this item, please? Thank you. Then we'll come back to Councillor Bundy, please.
Thank you, Chair. In answer to Councillor Buckingham's question, we don't know, but all we can do is our best guess at this time. And we are quite a new authority, so we haven't got a massive track record to work to. But at the moment, our council tax income is holding up, and it'd be wrong for us to actually reduce our expectations and therefore reduce the tax base, which would actually be putting more burden on the council taxpayers.
Okay, Councillor, I'll allow it on this occasion, but we've gone back to the mover. Please.
Thank you very much, Chair. Sorry, I was a bit remiss there. It's simply to ask Councillor Bundy to clarify for me personally, is this figure, as Councillor Buckingham asks, is it purely arbitrary? Thank you.
Councillor Bundy.
The 98.5% is actually based, Chair, on our collection performance up to date, which is the only figures that we've got.
Thank you, Councillor. We will now move to the vote, councillors. Please.
Thank you, Chair. The vote is now commencing. All right, 10 seconds remaining. And the vote is now finished.
Thank you, councillors. That is carried. Thank you. Now move to agenda item 12, Local Tax Support Scheme 23 to 24. Once again, Councillor Bundy, please.
Thank you, Chair. This council is required to have a council tax support scheme. 2 years ago, this council set the level of support at 25% after harmonisation of the 4 legacy councils. At the meeting of the full council on the 1st of December 2021, it was agreed to keep the level the same. At the meeting of the executive earlier this month, it was agreed to recommend to full council that we again keep the level of council tax support the same. Changing the level would incur a cost of consultation. Lowering the level would also place extra pressure on the council's budget, and raising it would move it above the break-even point. The council tax collected for 21-22 equates to 96.42% of the net debt. This is 0.55% above the collection rate of 2021. The amount of council tax collected for the period 1st of April 2022 to the 31st of August 22 equates to 48.55% of the net debt, and this is 1.05% above the collection rate at the same point last year. I'm happy to propose the recommendation of paragraph 3, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Please may I see a seconder for this item, please? Councillor Wilkes.
Thank you, Chair. Like everybody else in this room, I welcome the ongoing support that this council provides to those that need it most, and I'm therefore happy to support the continuation of the local council tax support scheme into 23-24.
Thank you, Councillor. Would anybody like to speak to this item, please? Councillor Lynn Buckingham, please.
Thank you. It has been noted through the report that the amount of people applying for council tax support against those that have been granted the extra support is very, very low. I know that there is some help for making sure that people have got the right amount of money or the right benefits, but trying to access those routes in to find where to get that help and support isn't normally there. So it would be welcome to have a report on you know, not just figures saying 300 people have applied but only 5 have got them, as understanding why people haven't got that support. And I think the other part of that is in the children's tax, council tax support for care leavers, and how they pay or get support. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Anybody else wish to speak to this item, please? Councillor
Just quickly, in response to Councillor Buckingham's question, actually, if you go to page 105, 5.9, it does mention the majority of those that are refused assistance, why, and no one has appealed the process.
Thank you, Councillor. No one else? Then back to Councillor Bundy, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I think Councillor Buckingham has misunderstood the difference between council tax support and the Section 13A of the Finance Act, which is a discretionary discount scheme. 17,423 people are in receipt of council tax support. The figures that I think Councillor Buckingham was looking at was the 257 applicants that were received for the discretionary discount scheme, of which 14 were awarded and 243 were refused. And this year, so far, 142 applicants have been applications been received. 5 have been awarded, 104 have been refused, 33 are awaiting assessment. Some of those are purely and simply the fact that people just aren't providing us the information. We have never had anybody appeal against our decision. We can clearly show the methodology used in making those awards. And in nearly all the cases, the Revenue and Benefits Social Inclusion team have spoken to the customers and helped them in different ways. So we are actually making every effort to actually contact, help and assist all our residents. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillors. We will now move to the vote, please.
Thank you, Chair. The vote is now commencing. There are 10 seconds left. And the vote is now finished.
That's carried. Thank you, Councillors. Agenda item 13, Children's Social Care Case Management System. Please may I see Councillor Scott Edwards to move this motion, please.
Thank you, Chair. This report is to seek the Council's approval to proceed with the replacement of the case management system. It will be operated by the Children's Trust and funded by contributions from North and West. The current contract finishes in January 2025 and a new service needs to be in place to fulfil the service delivery contract with the Trust. There is not an option not to have a case management system. There was a previous capital bid for funding and implementation costs associated with this, but after further due diligence, it was deemed as there was no asset created, it cannot be created through capital resources and therefore must come from revenue. The costs of this are clearly set out in the report and the totals each council will pay. The timeline will start January 2023 with the procurement activities and will go live at the end of 2024, beginning of 2025. The recommendation is to delegate authority to the Executive Member of Finance and Transformation in consultation with the Executive Director of Finance and Performance to assess and utilise revenue reserves to fund the case management system for children's social care.
Thank you, councillors. Can I look for a seconder, please? Councillor Marks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I formally second this motion.
Thank you. Right, who would like to speak to this, please? Councillor.
Thank you. If the council were not to renew the contract with the Children's Trust, would we have to procure again afterwards?
Councillor Leanne Buckingham, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. Fully support us having to do this. We've had some discussions within the group asking why now, why won't it come live for a little while, and the discussions I've had is actually I really support that we're looking at this early so that we get the transformation right, so we get the change right in the right way. We need to make sure that we're having migration of the old system into the new system. So I fully support that we're doing this early, and I commend that we're taking the time to do it now.
Thank you, Councillor. Anybody else, please? Councillor Weatherall.
Thank you, Chair. My question is similar to Councillor Mercer's. The Trust currently has 2 masters, and questions about flexibility. Were that not to be the case in the future, could this system be split? Has it got that flexibility within it?
I'm sure Councillor Edwards has got that to answer in a minute, but is there anybody else wish to speak to this, please? Councillor Maxwell, please.
It's a similar question to this, but I'd like to know, can we in North Hants Council actually go alone without the support of the West?
Anybody else wish to speak to this item, please? Back to you, Councillor Edwards, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Bucking, for your support on that and your group support on that. Absolutely. Get in early and we can get it right. In response to the 2 questions about the Children's Trust and the procurement of it, I'm going to have to come back to you because I'm going to have to seek technical advice on that because I don't know the answer to that. So I will come back to you on that. And Councillor Maxwell, no, it needs to come from both councils.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards. Right, councillors, we will now move to the vote, please.
Thank you, Chair. The vote is now commencing. There are 10 seconds remaining. And the vote is now ended.
That's unanimously carried, councillors. Thank you. Agenda item 14, councillors. Capital Programme Update 22 to 23. Please may I see Councillor Bundy to move this item, please.
Thank you, Chair. Any new borrowing or virement of this council in excess of £500,000 must be agreed at full council. This report seeks approval for 3 schemes that have been agreed at executive but are in excess of the £500,000 limit. These 3 items are Cannock Road Housing Development, a total virement of £643,000, made up of the most recent environment request of £454,000, in addition to a previous approved transfer of £189 million. The environment is funded from the existing capital budget within the HRA capital programme. The second item is street lighting LED upgrade projects, increase of £6.17 million to the capital programme, £3.03 million 22-23, £2.157 million in 23-24, and a further £980,000 in 24-25. This will be funded through borrowing. And then the last item is children's residential home provision, and that's an increase of £762,000, to the capital programme, and this again will be funded through borrowing. This recommendation is set out at paragraph 3, and I'm happy to propose it, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Does anybody second this item, please? Oh, thank you. Councillor Lawman.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I'm sure everybody will join us in welcoming the completion of the Cannock Road housing development for social housing, and also for improved and enhanced provision for children in homes. But also I wanted to particularly pick out the street lighting, which is replacing 22,000 bulbs with modern LED lighting, and can be seen as an investor save project. It's a significant sum, but the break-even should be after 9 years or 10.5 years if you take a whole cost scenario, depending on what happens to energy costs and borrowing costs, of course. The significant benefit is the reduction in CO2, using 20 to 35% of the current energy levels, equating to a reduction of 500 tonnes of carbon monoxide for this authority. And as has been said, the borrowing will come through government Treasury prudential facilities, and will require changes to the PFI agreement. But that should all be taken care of in due course, so I'm happy to second this paper.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Hakewell, please.
Thank you, Chairman. One always should apply credit where it's due, and whilst we're upgrading these street lights, credit should be due. And in fact, Chairman, I think you might even have been on the County Council at that time, maybe not. But the transfer of the street lighting to Balfour Beatty was saving something like £2 million a year to the former County Council. And I think some credit should be recognised that any authority, whether it ends up in a difficult time or not, has excellent pieces of good practice. So I welcome the fact that we're going to LED lighting. You couldn't be part of the Green Alliance without welcoming that, and welcoming the fact that the government are prepared to put their hand in their pocket for that. On 5.7, Chairman, the children's residential home, actually also welcome that. We have been talking, certainly in the scrutiny with the Children's Trust, of finding the opportunity to use existing buildings if we can. And all I would say there is, very happy to support this particular item. I'll press the button on my machine. But what we should do is we should hurry up that asset management process, the scrutiny that's going on, to identify if we have other buildings which are appropriate for conversion, which can help to mitigate what we already heard was where those young children with very special needs are often placed a very long way away. The sooner we can bring those children into our county, or should I say the north or the west, the better. So I do hope that we will recognise that this is the start, not the end, of that process. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, I was there at the time, but the voters saw through me subsequently. Councillor Mercer, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, first of all, I'd like to say I support all three of these items. I've got particular comments on each of them. The Cannock Road one was started when I was in the Cabinet, and I fully support it, and we need to go through with it. The children's home one as well, I've supported for a number of years, so I'm happy with that as well. I'm disappointed that we've ended up in this position with the LED lights, because when the PFI contract was first negotiated, I made a speech at the County Council saying we should use LED lights, and it was turned down. So we missed an opportunity. We could have saved a lot of money on electricity in the county over the last decade, and we are now having to go and retread the same path. It's a pity.
Thank you. Councillor Colquhoun, please.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Hakewell quite rightly states there that we should commend good practice and good results. Conversely, I would direct Council to point 5.1, the Cannock Road housing development. This has been going on now for a terrible amount of time. It looks to me, having passed it only this morning, it's nowhere near completion. There appears to be money thrown at it from day one. With hindsight, we may have been better demolishing the blooming thing and rebuilding, but too late for that. But it seems to me that we're continually throwing money at this project. I am one of the councillors in the ward concerned here, and it's heartbreaking for us. Councillor Pengelly, I'm sure, is going to comment on a particular family with very desperate needs for a severely disabled child, waiting and hoping to take residence in this complex. And this family is in inadequate accommodation, has been for years, hopefully waiting to move in there. I would really, really like to see this project being moved on, coming to a conclusion and being utilised for its proper purpose. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Pengelly, please.
Yes, Chair. I welcome at last Cannock Road getting the green light, and I'd ask officers to look at the reasons why we've got to where we are. The contract is a strange contract. It was first put forward by Cornwall Council when we started merging to North Northampton. We had COVID, and those of us that know the area realised straight away that the contractor should never have been given the contract in the first place. I'd like to know why, and I know you can't give answers today, but why that contract was given. From day one, we realised they were never going to start work on it, and so that was a year we lost. When Councillor Mercer says that he looked at it, he did, and we got told about a year ago that the contract was going to start, that the money was there, everything was in place, and another year delay, and the last we got where we are. I'd like to say well done to the officers who have looked through this project and found out where the weaknesses are on it, and there have been weaknesses. I think it's an enormous amount of money to spend on bungalows, but there are people that need them. It will regenerate that area. It's something that we don't want that club. We can't go back to anything now anyway. We want that to be housing for the people of the town. And what we want is to see what happened with Corby Borough Council, more bungalows being built, because it looks like there's been a stop in new properties being built in the town. And also across North Northamptonshire, in Kettering, Wellingborough and East Northampton, new council properties, which are very important to the people we serve. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Zoe McGee, please.
Thank you, Chair. My question is regarding to the street lights. Are they going to be turned on? Is this going to make a difference? The next time I am walking around Kingswood in the absolute pitch black and the 100th person, if I had £1 for every person that told me it was absolutely pitch black there, is this actually going to make a difference? Are we now going to have finally light? Can I celebrate that, or am I jumping to conclusions?
Anybody else wish to speak to this item, please, councillors? Councillor Maxwell, please.
My question is going to be do you think in the future that villages could be considered for lighting? Because at present, all villages have to pay for the lighting, and some villages are going to find it difficult next year. So what help can they get? Thank you.
Councillor John McGee, please.
Chair, you know I don't like to reminisce about the old county council, but some of you on here cut the lighting by 33%. So I welcome that at least we're doing something green here and we might have more lit up areas. I welcome that. I would like to think that we actually concentrate in areas where it's most needed. Some of our villages we're left behind areas where we have serious problems, and it'd be great to do that. But I welcome all three of these. Of course we do. They'll make a difference to the people in Northamptonshire. So we do welcome the report.
Anybody else wish to speak to this item, please? Back to you then, Councillor Bundy, please.
Thank you, Chair. Some of the comments I will certainly take back and pass on to the various departments. This is about environment and borrowing. It's not really about the actual projects. But I think it's interesting that several councillors have highlighted the problems that have been created by past councils that with this borrowing and this environment, this council is putting right.
Thank you, Councillor. We will now move to the vote, please.
Thank you, Chair. The vote is now commencing. There are 10 seconds remaining. And the vote is now ended.
Thank you, councillors. That is carried. I'm advised that this is the time we should have a very strict 10-minute break. Agenda item 15, councillors, full council meeting start time. Please may I see the monitoring officer to introduce this report, please.
Thank you, Chair. Before you may wish to call in Councillor Laura Lorman, the Chair of Democracy and Standards Committee. Officers prepared various options and reports for the Constitutional Working Group and the Democracy and Standards Committee for them to consider this matter, which, as most of you will be aware, full council debated some months ago. So, Chair, I think Councillor Lorman would like to introduce the report and formally move it.
Councillor Laura Lorman, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, where do we start? We've been here on the 29th of September, not quite here, but next door, and we discussed it. The Democracy and Standards Committee was tasked at the time to take a review once we had an opportunity to see how our full council meetings were working, and that prompted the change from the 7 o'clock previous start, which was under the shadow introduced, and it was changed to 2 o'clock. Our officers, and first of all, on behalf of the Democracy and Standards Committee and also the Constitution Working Group, thank you to the officers who have worked tirelessly on various surveys that we felt should be going to the members to find some background. You will see in some of the appendices that various durations were had, and some of them were very extensive at the 2 o'clock. I must say I'm glad that when we had 4 hours and 13 minutes, it did start at 2 o'clock rather than at 7 o'clock at the time. I would like to thank all 53 members who were kind enough to take the time out of the 78 members to actually respond to our officers' survey. We have attached as Appendix B the report on YouTube hits. You have a comparison in Appendix C from various other councils in a similar position to us and their starting time. There's a complete range of times. We also have the result of a questionnaire to councillors to really understand whether people, whether they are full-time employed, part-time employed, retired, student, other, whether they care for somebody else and the time it takes people to get to the meetings as well. All in all, I think there was sufficient information sent out to members to understand and to make their choice. We are fully aware that it will not suit everybody. That's absolutely clear. There will be many people, perhaps, who would prefer to go back to the old times of a 7 o'clock starting time. But to those members who want a late start in the afternoon or early evening, please consider also the transport options people have in the winter. For instance, they have to drive back, and that doesn't just include us, that includes our officers as well. And we have a duty of care to our officers who are very, very happy to work whatever it is, but we have to look at that as well. So we have on page 132, for instance, we have the mode mean and median time. We had a long discussion in the Constitution Working Group, and it didn't really totally come to one view. Similar in the Democracy and Standards Committee, because I must say I felt that we owe it to the full council, to all full council members, to actually have a say what they would like to see going forward. We're delivering you the paper. It is really up to you, members, whether you want to wish to endorse a recommendation to 5 o'clock, whether you have any other amendments you wish to see. So without any further ado, I commend this report.
Do we have a seconder for this item, please? Councillor, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, of course, this is a classic case of not being able to please everybody all of the time. And everyone, of course, will have their own views and opinions on this. It was interesting to note that quite a few people responded that they would like to be around the 6 to 7 mark. And I was quite interested to see that, because that's really going back to how we used to do it in the sovereign borough days, certainly at Wellingborough. But of course, for those working full-time, and that was by far the biggest cohort, I think, on the questionnaire, it doesn't break the day up quite as much. And of course, I think in our quest to recruit younger council members, we have to be mindful of their working days. They've got young families, they're building careers and what have you. And if we want to try and get them interested in council and to stand for election, we need to bear that in mind too. I think the other important factor is that we really need to engage more with the electorate. And I know very few people, nobody today, very few people physically attend, but quite a few follow full council on social media, on YouTube. And I think we really should be encouraging them to residents of Northamptonshire to take an interest in the democratic process. So though it's a compromise, well, it has to be, there's no right or wrong answer here, I think it's a good compromise, and I support a 5 p.m. Start time, and I'm happy to second the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Martin Griffiths, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I welcome this and will be supporting this change, as I believe it is in the best interests of councillors, officers, but more importantly, our residents. My only concern is it has taken 14 months to get to this situation, and I respectfully suggest that with a little bit more listening and leadership and a little less hot air and bluster, we could have and should have sorted this out in our first year and not late in our second. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor John McGee, please.
Thank you, Chair. This paper reminds me of the paper on the green bins, where a majority of people voted for something and we totally ignored it. That's what we're doing here. A majority of people voted for 6:30 or 7, but we've got a recommendation for 5 o'clock. Let's be real, that's rush hour. People coming from Wellingborough, Rushden, East Northampton, etc. are travelling in rush hour. It's a horrendous time for them to travel. I don't mind, I'm 10 minutes walk for here. Don't even need a car. But most of you will be travelling in rush hour. Won't be helpful. The best time, as the speaker before me said, we want to encourage young people who are working, got jobs, and they don't all work within Northampton, they work in London, etc., or they're commuting, they've got to get back in time. 6:30, 7 o'clock is the right time. I personally like daytime meetings, but I'm realistic to know I can't be selfish. We've got to think of everyone else. So the best time for the majority of people in here who voted for it is 6:30, in my opinion. So let's be honest with each other. I can see Councillor Mercer jumping about already. I think him and his good lady are the only two that keep pushing for the earlier meetings. There's a majority of people here. The majority voted for 6:30 or 7 o'clock, and that's what it should be, so we can encourage everyone to play a full part. Thank you, Chair.
I'm taking these in order, Councillor, but you can answer. I've got you down to speak in a minute. Councillor Addison, please.
Thank you, Chair. Great minds think alike, Leader. Yes, the consultation, again, we're ignoring what a majority of people have voted for. And for people coming from work, which I think one of the other councillors have mentioned, 5 o'clock is a very difficult time if you're leaving the office or the factory floor. It should be 6:30 to 7 o'clock, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Colquhoun, please.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, on Appendix C, we have start times for full meetings at other unitary authorities. I think that's rather worthless. I don't know why that's in there. But anyway, it's there and we put up with it. But I would agree, firstly, with Councillor Allarbone, who comments on the need to introduce younger members, to get other people interested, etc. And those younger members, as explained, tend to be at work or have family commitments or whatever during the day. I'm a retired person. I can, any time of day suits me. I'm happy to come out any time. But I look at page 142 and on the bar chart. And the bar chart shows quite clearly the preferred time. Very, very clearly, actually. I quite like bar charts. They're very simple. But the two final charts, the two on the right, show the preferred time. I believe between 6 o'clock and 7 o'clock. I would suggest splitting the difference there and calling it 6:30. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Zoe McGee, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not going to go on too long because I think the points have already been established, but not to point out the obvious, young person who works full-time and also is a councillor, exactly the type of demographic that we'd all like to see more of. I actually finish work at 5:30, so 5 o'clock would make me half an hour late, potentially more than that. Would that affect my attendance? Would that affect anything on my record? I also hybrid work in London, so if we were to start at 6:30, if it was a day I was in work, you'd be seeing me approximately an hour after that, at 7:30. So, again, I think this is the same flawed logic that ended up with us charging for green bins. Sometimes I do just think this council's run on flawed logic. You can clearly see that the majority of people wanted 6 or 7. This is just such a waste of conversation, in my opinion, when there's young people out there, again, who need our help. So, yeah, I think let's just go with the majority, draw a line under it and focus on something that's actually going to make a difference to our communities. Thank you.
Councillor Paul Bell, please.
Thank you, Chair. It's interesting when we debate these times. If you were once, in the past, a county council, there used to be, I think it's 10 o'clock at the county council. And that was bad enough going there. They used to have a guillotine. I can remember the chief whip cutting us off at 6 o'clock so we could go home. But we actually asked councillors what they wanted. And it's been mentioned that the time is somewhere between 6 and 7. So why aren't we listening to the majority of the councillors? We talk about having young councillors come on here to join this council, which I think is a great idea when we oldies have passed on to better places. But we don't think of it. If you're 5 o'clock and work in London, it's going to take an hour and a half if you get into Corby. If you think for a 6 o'clock start time, you get a chance to get here on time. You get compromised. If you want to leave to get here for 5 o'clock from Wellingborough, we've got to leave at 4 o'clock. And I'd like to welcome you to the Wellingborough rush hour. They queue to get out of Wellingborough at 4 o'clock. So we've got to leave earlier. So I'm quite happy to pose, and I don't know if I get a seconder, that we change the start time to 6 o'clock. I'd so move it. If there's a seconder, so be it. If it's not, that's it.
Councillor Andy Mercer, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, first of all, I'd like to reply to Councillor McGee. The reason I jump is because there's
Sorry, Councillor. We need a seconder for that motion, please.
I'm happy to second that motion that Councillor Bell proposed.
Thank you, Councillor. Right, sorry.
We're now speaking on the amendment.
Can I continue?
Speaking to the amendment.
Am I allowed to continue, though?
Yes, please.
Well, if I was originally speaking to the original motion, do I have to now stop and speak to the amendment now?
Yes, Councillor.
Right, okay. Well, I'll first of all reply to Councillor McGee. The reason why I jump is because there's certain frequencies that resonate in my hearing aid and certain voices make me jump as a result. Thank you. Right. Right, now, as regards the time of this, 6:30 means that we have to leave at about 5 o'clock from Rushden and South, which is the rush hour. So 6:30 means we travel during the rush hour. If you live very close to here, travelling during the rush hour is only a short distance. And what's more, if you leave from 10 minutes away, you're not in the rush hour to get here for 6:30, but from where I am, you are. So that's why I opposed 6:30, because it meant we had to fight our way through rush hour. Secondly, people with young families, for them, it's best to try and avoid the time of about 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock being out of the house, because that's when you want to put the children to bed. Perhaps it's a while since I've had children, admittedly, but I'm still aware of them and I occasionally babysit. So that time is not obviously one that young people find superior to other times. There's not a huge number of people of school age in here, so I'm not sure that we're the best people to qualify to answer that question. Right, next, if you have starting time at, say, 6:30, then with a 4-hour meeting, which many of these are, that means you're finishing at 10:30. For those of us living in the extremities of this unitary authority, that means we're getting on for midnight. And some of our officers have to commute further than we do, so they have a similar problem. I don't think that satisfies our duty of care to ask people to sit through a long, fractious meeting sometimes and then have to travel home near midnight. It doesn't make a lot of sense. If you start at, say, 5 o'clock, then we're leaving from, say, Beaujeu or somewhere like that at about 3:45, which means you've cleared the worst of the traffic problems before you get to Corby. I aim to get here by about 4:30 if it's a 5 o'clock meeting, which means that I'm travelling mostly before the rush hour. I then have the meeting running through to 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, and I go back home after the rush hour and before it's too late. So the 5 o'clock compromise was accepted by the committee because it satisfied those conditions. Now, there seems to be a concerted campaign that has built up around 6:30, but there doesn't seem to be any strong logic behind it. I've given logical reasons why 5 o'clock was chosen. They're strong reasons. They're reasons that stand up to evidential basis. I therefore suggest that we turn down the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I don't know about kids. I've got a granddaughter of 30. I'm going to just let the legal officer jump in here, please, just to clarify what we are talking about.
Yes, so just to be clear, there was an amendment that the council start time be changed to 6 p.m. The chair now has a long list of speakers that were already in place prior to the amendment. I should think he will still follow that list, but please just indicate if you don't want to speak on the amendment and would rather speak on the substantive motion if we go back to that.
Right. Just tell me if you don't wish to speak anymore. Councillor DL, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to speak on the amendment for 6 p.m. and just speaking as a working councillor, I would find the 5 p.m. time exceptionally difficult to get to council meetings. I don't finish work until 5:30, and even then sometimes it's 5:45. So, you know, just to pack up work and then rush off to a council meeting, I don't like coming in late. I like to be here to represent my residents, and I just don't think that it's a good look really to come rushing in sort of after work. So I'm more than happy to support Councillor Bell's amendment for 6 p.m. And I think that's far more of a sensible time. And I think we're just sort of in danger, really, of revisiting conversations that we had 18 months ago. And I just think we need to move forward and just get some kind of clarity on this, because I think there's just a bit of confusion going on. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Jill Mercer, please.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I was a bit disappointed at the numbers of people that replied. If you don't, I mean, it doesn't take that long to fill out a survey. And really, everyone should have replied. And in particular, we seem to have less people that travel for 30 to 60 minutes. Now, that's all of us in the south. We have to leave an hour to get here, and that is a minimum. And on occasion, we have even been late because of a road problem. We have to take into account all types of weather. When we were coming to a meeting here recently, it was pouring with rain, very little visibility. If you're driving home late, that is dangerous. So I was on the Constitution Working Group and on the Democracy and Standards, and we discussed it thoroughly. And we noted, obviously, the consultation response, but we felt that not everyone had replied. And so we started to just apply logic. Now, we had cross-party support someone from every single party voted with us for 5 o'clock, and it was really just as a compromise, because we felt that, you know, the daytime, obviously if people are working, it's just not convenient. We didn't want people to be going home too late in dangerous conditions, and so we came to that compromise of 5 o'clock. I accept that no time will suit everybody. We just felt that that was a compromise that we could accept. So I'm afraid I'm also not in favour of the 6 o'clock.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Dorothy Maxwell, please.
I would like to say that I think 6 o'clock is for me, because I think that most people coming from a railway station or coming from London would be able to come straight to Corby. However, that's if the trains are running. However, I think one of the issues for us living in Rushden is not only the traffic, but the fact that there's no lights. And that's something that needs to be considered. I feel that young people could actually ask their employer to let them go early if they had a council meeting. So I say 6 o'clock.
Councillor Helen Harrison, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Having read this report and seen that the majority of councillors wanted the meetings to return to evenings, and that the majority of those both looked at 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock, it seems to me that we should go with the wishes of the members. This is a member-led organisation, and we should be listening to what our members have to say. So I'm very happy to support Councillor Bell's amendment and vote for a 6 p.m. start time.
Councillor Hakewell, please.
Thank you, Chairman. We should welcome scrutiny, and we should welcome the scrutiny of members of the public who would be able to potentially get here much more likely at 6 o'clock. At 5 o'clock, by the nature of things that people have said, a member of the public who wanted to come, and we should welcome them, would have to leave at 3:45 to get here by 5. Chairman, you will also know, if you go back in time, why do we have 6 full council meetings a year? And as far as I can tell, we have 6 full council meetings a year because from my time at start in 1987 to 2003, we had the committee system. And the committee system worked in a 2-monthly cycle, and decisions at committee had to go to full council. Therefore, you had a full council every 2 months. The committee system is dead, although I do understand one of our MPs wanted it to be the committee system when we changed to this system, but that seems to have gone away. So the point is, we're all talking about the time. We are set by 6 council meetings technically per year. Well, maybe we should have 8, and we should have a more balanced agenda, which doesn't go on till 10 o'clock at night. Chairman, you admirably chair the meeting and even stop me talking sometimes. But the point we're looking at is we're trying to solve a problem in the wrong direction. So if we had 8 meetings a year and we started them at 6 o'clock or 7, then we dispense with the history, which is the inertia of where we're at with 6. And actually we could welcome members of the community and those who we are going to attract in 2025 to fresh new wards would be able to make their decision knowing that they could get to a meeting by 6 o'clock. So, Chairman, those would be my particular comments, and I'll support 6 o'clock, very much so. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor John Paul Carr, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's just one observation I'd like to make more than anything else. I'm just wondering whether annual council could be held at 7 o'clock. It tends to be quite structured in regards to what takes place based on what we had this year, but more importantly, it's actually a civic occasion. And if you're thinking about inviting family or friends, if you're in the chair or other invitees, I think that might be a more acceptable time. Going back, however, to all the points that you're talking about, not everybody works from 9 to 5 anymore. Some people work in the evenings. Some people have children, some people don't. Some older people don't like driving at night. Some younger people don't like driving at night. There are so many issues you could cover in regards to when is the most appropriate time to have a council meeting. The point is, I think, is when you put your name forward, and it's no different than if you belong to any other organisation or society or something like that, which you want to be involved in, there are always issues about whether you can attend meetings or not. And there's many reasons sometimes why people can't come to meetings, and I think sometimes we fully, obviously, accept those reasons. So I'm quite indifferent about whether it's 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 2 o'clock or so on. But I shall carry on listening to the debate, Mr Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Macaulay-Nicholl, please.
Thank you. Just highlighting members to page 132, 5.7, you can see the mode, median and start time of the councillor survey. The mean time is set at 4:23 with a median of dead on 5 o'clock. Once you actually look at the analytics of the data, to me it suggests that 5 p.m. is a more than fair time.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Wendy Brackenbury, please.
Thank you, Chair. I agree with a number of points that have been made, particularly from Councillor John Paul Carr and Councillor Andy Mercer. Certainly when I had young children at home, I would prefer to be there to put them in bed and read them a story at night, so actually 6 or 7 wouldn't be an ideal time, and that wouldn't be the time to encourage me to come out. I think we do have to be mindful of the distance some councillors have to travel. Unless you're actually a Corby councillor, you have got to travel a little distance, and there are some that live nearer to Milton Keynes, quite frankly, than Corby, I understand. So I think we should be mindful of that. A 6 o'clock start for anyone who travels does mean that they hit the rush hour at 5 o'clock. So for that reason, I don't think that 6 o'clock is ideal. And we do have a Democracy and Standards Committee, which have obviously looked at this. It is cross-party, and we've sent them work. I don't know why we gave them this to do if we're not then going to listen to what's come out of their meetings. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Lloyd Bundy, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just a little bit baffled. I just get the impression that we're potentially asking or have asked the wrong questions. Question 4 saying what time do you want the council meetings to be at, and then giving people numerous choices. We know from looking at it that 53 members actually responded, but there's loads more than 53 responses actually on that bar chart. And yes, there's 53 members who've said that they prefer before 5, and there's 67 members who say they preferred after 5. But it could be a case that one person voted 4 times for after 5, or 3 people voted for before 5. So, quite honestly, I think the consultation is fundamentally flawed, and that does create a difficulty as to where we're at today.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Anna Pandy, please.
Thank you, Chair. Let me see the data. Actually, I would like to point the question number 141. It says the full-time employment members are 24, and absence whenever you see is around 20. So I assume most people who are in full-time employment, they have been missing the full council meeting. And most council meeting, nearly 50%, they don't last more than 3 hours. So, and shifting time to 5 is not going to help us. Anyone, like few councillors said, if someone is in full-time employment, they will have to take off, even if they have to leave at 4 o'clock. So moving time full council meeting at 5 is not going to serve any purpose. And across the other data, I would like to point, most 60% councils, they have time after 6:30. So I would support time at 6 p.m. starting, or after that, maybe 6:30 is better to avoid any rush hour for the people. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Leanne Buckingham, please.
Thank you, Chair. I have no intention of surmising what people's circumstances might be, nor talking about my own personal one. But Councillor Mercer, you said there's no logic as to why we're suggesting between 6 and 7. That's on page 142, where it's quite clear from the picture, if you don't want to read the numbers, that between 6 and 7 is the time that most of us in this room suggested we should. So I really welcome Councillor Bell's proposal and will support it wholly.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Helen Howell, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's a really, really difficult subject, this. We all have our own different circumstances. I'm extremely fortunate that I'm able to manage my time and attend meetings as and when they arrive. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here, because when I took this role and I stood for council, I was very, very well aware that we would have meetings at different times of the day, be it morning, afternoon and evening. And I think we have to be quite pragmatic about how and why we took this role on. It's very interesting to see that most of the meetings that we have now, and I would say once this council has settled down a bit more, and I think it has, and we're able to get the business done within decent times, other than obviously the budget that seems to take forever. But we're looking at up to 3 hours, which is what our constitution states. And actually, let's not forget, we're only talking about 6 meetings a year here. Ultimately, if we're not able to manage our diaries, bearing in mind we are aware of these dates a year in advance, then, you know, it's a pretty rum deal, really, that people aren't able to manage 6 dates a year. I'm not going to make any comment actually on the time, because that wouldn't be fair of me, because as I said, I'm able to manage my time. We did ask the question, however, as to what time members wanted the meetings. I totally agree with Councillor Bundy. It was unfortunate that members got more than one choice. I think if we had the data that just highlighted their absolute preference, we'd be in a better position now to be able to make a decision. But if you look also about the number of recorded apologies, across the board, they're pretty similar, be it 2 o'clock or 7 o'clock. So really, I think members should consider, 1, what you signed up for, 2, you have a year to plan your diary, and three, really, we've got to come to some sort of compromise. And actually, maybe we should be looking at asking members exactly what time they wanted. I agree with Councillor Bundy. I just think it was a bit confusing. And I must say, the members of the Democracy and Standards and the other committees have tried to come up with an impossible suggestion. So I don't think it's right to criticise them. It's never going to be right for everybody. But we all need to compromise. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Lee Wilkes, please.
Thanks, Chair. So firstly, I should repeat what's already been said, that I do welcome the hard work that's been put in by Councillor Lorman and colleagues. It was clearly a difficult thing to do. I'm one of the ones here that's actually messed up the stats, because I put 2 different date times in. I put 2 p.m, which I didn't want, but I would go with if that's what the majority wanted, and 7 p.m, which is my preferred time. I take on board comments that were made by Councillor Zoe McGee was one that says, you know, if she's working in London, she couldn't get here for 7:30. Well, yeah, clearly that's true for any of us that work any distance away. It's, you know, we have to make the effort to get here. Councillor Griffith said this should have been done a year ago or more, but of course that would be ignoring the fact that what we tried to do here, and I'm one of the ones that wanted 7 p.m. But what we tried to do here is to see if public participation improved by changing the date. It's the reason that I voted to try 2 p.m, because I thought it was right to see if more of the public turned up. That hasn't really happened, but it was worth seeing if it helped the public. I don't think we should have rushed it. I think we should see if it helps the public. Councillor Bell mentioned this having a guillotine, but actually I think Councillor Hakel made probably the most pertinent point. He mentioned that actually we could bring some of these, we could manage the meetings. I think that we as councillors can help this. A meeting starting at 7 o'clock is not that big an issue, in my view, if it runs to time. And I think this is where councillors can help. I looked just tonight, 19 questions we've got coming up later on. That is going to take a long time. We know that. There are things that we as councillors could do to help the officers to avoid them having to stay late. Some things can be done in advance. I don't think a 6 p.m. start is any more beneficial than the 5 p.m. start. I think it's got all the same inherent problems, and the traffic being one of them. So I just can't support. I'm really flexible on what the majority want, but I don't see 6 is better than 7. 6 is better than 5. I still think 6:37, and that's what the majority wanted as it happens.
Councillor Smithers, please.
Thank you, Chairman. And I've listened very carefully to this debate, and I would like to also echo the thanks to Councillor Lorman for her diligent work, and to Adele Wiley and the Democracy and Standards Committee there to come to this, let's say, which someone has already coined a phrase, an impossible solution to suggestion for this council. Not one of us is all going to agree on a set time. However, I'm quite mindful that, we live in a modern time and people are working at all different times of the day. People work at night shifts. Would we exclude people from night shifts if we moved it to 6 when they can't come in at 2? People that work at 2, are we excluding them because we're starting at 2? It's impossible to come to an absolute conclusion on this. But what I would say is that I think we need to remember it's about the public coming, participation from the public. And I think it would probably be right for us to understand that a majority of the public would feel more comfortable with later meetings. So therefore, I think the amendment that's been brought forward for a 6 o'clock start, I think that we should support that and look to see how that works out for us over the rest of this municipal period. Again, when we have the elections in 2025, if we find that things aren't going as we planned at a 6 o'clock time slot, then maybe that council may look at it again. But I think we need to support where we are at the moment and think about our members of the public, because we are thinking about ourselves here, about driving and so on. We've got to think about the electorate that put us here to do a job. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Matt Binley, please.
Well, Chair, that makes it very, very difficult, because Councillor Smithers has absolutely hit the nail on the head for me, because one of the things that I was really concerned about whilst listening to a lot of comments around the chamber was really how little was actually being said about the electorate and their participation. It was more about what we wanted as elected members, which of course is the point there. It's elected members. We are put here by the electorate, and we have to consider participation from them. As you may all recall, I spoke about this the last time, and actually my circumstances have now changed. 2 o'clock would suit me far better. But it's not about what I want, it's about what the public want. And I completely agree with Councillor Bell and a lot of the other comments that I've said. And as I've said, Councillor Smith has just really hit the nail on the head. It's about what we're going to get the most public participation from, so that they can be involved in democracy. That's the point. It's democracy in action. And so really there's very little that I can add, and I completely support the leader's comments. So thank you, Chair, and I will be supporting the 6 o'clock change.
Councillor David Howes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, as was already said tonight by some people, there are some of us that do have a young family. So, and I'm one of those with an 8 and a 5-year-old. And with moving the time to a later time, it's actually personally a great inconvenience. However, as been said, this isn't about my personal situation. It's about with this not being particularly a right and wrong answer. It's about what most people here have voted for. And I think most people here voted not just for their personal situation, but they also voted with what they thought was best for the public. And as Councillor Binley's just said, that a later time, although personally inconvenient, because that's the time, Mr. Chairman, that you'll no doubt realise I put my children to bed or take my share. Mrs. Howes will not be very happy with us tonight. If we do move this, that's the time that I spend talking to my children about things they're interested in, cash flow forecasts, budgets, things like that. Very interesting, Mr. Chairman. They will miss out on that. So perhaps I will show them the YouTube videos of our council meetings. But I will be supporting the amendment because I do think actually, on reflection, it is probably the right thing to do for the public as well as most of the people who have voted. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councillor. Don't forget to explain PFI to them as well.
I didn't spend any time, Mr. Chairman, at the previous county council, so I will need you to help me with that. Thank you.
Councillor David Brackenbury, please.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I do commend to Councillor Howe's children the watching of the YouTubes of our proceedings, because I'm sure that they will sleep like babies out during what we're up to. So yes, I'm not really going to come down on one or the other side of which specific time to adopt on this, because I think it's been a very interesting discussion, and I think the leader is absolutely right that it isn't really about us. It's about maximising the exposure that these meetings have and maximising the opportunity for residents to have to engage with what this council is doing. The other reason I really got to my feet, I think it's important to make the point that this is not, this is one of the few measures which is not being brought by the executive, it's not being brought by the leadership. This is an absolutely free discussion. It's a free vote for every member of this council to engage with, regardless of any political party loyalties they may have. So this, ladies and gentlemen, is entirely up to you. As I say, I'm not going to come down with this time or that time. I'm more than happy to go with what is decided by the majority. Thank you.
Councillor Pengelly, please.
Yes, Chair. Going into this election, most of the Labour members who put their name forward were in the view that the meetings would be held in the evening. That was what was communicated to them. I always said that it could change. I always said it could change at any time, but they all believed it would be 7 o'clock meetings. So I think we have to take into consideration what people had planned. We have elections in 2025 when there'll be a Labour majority, hopefully. But before then, I do think, being serious, I think I agree with what Jason said, the leader of the council said. I think in, say, February 2025, we need to debate on this again to say, look, this is what we believe is the best time going forward. So people standing in that election know exactly what time their meetings will be. And then if they can't make it, it's a shame. They won't stand, but people stood in this election believing the meetings will be at 7 o'clock. So I agree with the compromise. I welcome Councillor Bell's proposal at 6 o'clock, and I think we can all live around that, and I think it's very good for the public as well. Thank you.
You haven't spoken, have you? You have? So what do I allow here?
Well, it's up to you, but we don't normally allow you to speak twice.
I'm advised we don't allow you to speak twice, Councillor. Councillor Bell, we'll come back to you now.
Thank you, Chair. I think everybody said what needs to be said, but the most important thing, we're here to represent the members of our wards. And let's look at this council chamber today. I can't see out there, so I don't know if there are members of the public out there. But when we had the 7 o'clock meetings, how many times did the members of the public come to raise their problems? And we have to think of that when we vote in a moment. It's what we're doing here to represent the people. The inconvenience is what we put ourselves forward to be elected, but we're here to represent the people. And I stand by my recommendation.
Thank you, Councillors. Now, we're about to move to the vote, but I'm just going to ask Adele just to remind you exactly what you are voting for or against.
Okay, so we're voting on the amendment, and that is that the normal start time of future meetings, with the exception of the budget meeting and special extraordinary meetings, be a 6 p.m. start time. So we'll vote on the amendment. If that's carried, that will become the substantive motion. Then we will do another vote. If it falls, then we go back to the substantive motion and we debate that.
Okay, we will now move to the vote, please.
Thank you, Chair. The vote on the amendment is now commencing.
Yeah.
No, we're on the amendment.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, members, the vote on the amendment is now commencing.
Hmm?
10 seconds remaining.
This is carried. It becomes
And the vote is now finished.
That's carried. So that is carried, councillors. That becomes now the substantive motion. And Councillor Lawman, please.
Thank you, Chairman.
Well, unless anybody else wishes to speak. Sorry.
Chair, very quickly, common sense prevails. Thank you for all those who did vote. And isn't it nice to hear the Conservative group isn't got a whip on? That's great to hear. Long may it last.
Councillor Brackenbury, please.
Can I just make one point? The times of the meetings that I've been to that have had the majority of members of the public, by a large majority, is the executive, and that starts at 9, 10 o'clock in the morning. I'll just put that out there.
Thank you, Councillor Hakewell, please.
I've no idea why we're still talking, but in that resolution it talked about emergency meetings with the exception of. I would hope that if there is an emergency or an exceptional meeting, we will still try to apply 6 o'clock, not just do it in the day.
Sorry, Paul.
Sorry, actually we would normally go for 7 o'clock, only on the grounds that obviously being an extraordinary meeting, members wouldn't have had an opportunity to pre-plan. So we would default to 7 p.m.
Thank you. Councillor Laura Lawman, please.
Thank you, Chairman.
Sorry, I'm sorry again.
I give
Councillor Smithers, please.
Up, down, up, down, up, down. Sorry, Councillor Lawman. Yes, I just wanted to clarify a point, and Councillor McGee, thank you very much for appreciating that us Conservatives and you Labour can work together, and I'd just like, for the record, to say that the decision wasn't whipped.
Councillor Laura Lawman, please.
Are you absolutely sure,
Yes,
Chairman?
positive.
Really? Really sure?
Yes.
Do you want to ask a friend? 50-50?
How far can I throw this?
It's up to you, Chairman. Right, thank you very much for every single person through the Chairman who's expressed their views this evening, or this afternoon, feels like evening, looking outside as it gets dark. I really appreciate that. In retrospect, yes, the questionnaire should have just said morning, midday, afternoon, nothing else. Given individual times has diluted it because I put my hands up. I ticked every box I would be available for. That has diluted, and I'm sure, looking at the result, many other people have done exactly the same. So with that, we've got to live with that, but it's one of the first times that we actually had 53 out of 78 councillors who expressed their view when they wanted a meeting. And the majority, it was quite clear, wanted the evening meeting. And there are only really two options. I commend you with 6 o'clock starting time. It is not ideal because there's the other side as well. We will be paying overtime to those officers who are involved in setting up and so on. Our other officers are also with time off in lieu. They're very hard pressed with their time anyway. But I fully agree. I look forward to seeing each individual person, each individual elected councillor at the next agreed 6 o'clock full council meeting. And I herewith move and agree to the arrangement to pass through at 6 o'clock.
We will now vote on the 6 o'clock substantive motion. Thank you. I think that's the right.
Thank you, Chair. The vote on the substantive motion shall now commence. Got 10 seconds left. And that's the end of the vote.
Thank you, councillors. That is passed. Thank you. Agenda item 16, councillors, the Northamptonshire Safeguard Adults Annual Report 21 to 22. Councillor Helen Harrison, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. After the excitement of the previous item, it gives me great pleasure to present to full council the Northamptonshire Safeguarding Adults Board Annual Report 2021 to 2022. Under Section 43 of the Care Act 2014, every local authority must establish a Safeguarding Adults Board for its area. The objective of a Safeguarding Adults Board is to help to protect adults in its area and assure itself that local safeguarding arrangements and partners act to help and protect adults in its area. It has 3 core duties. It must publish a strategic plan for each financial year that sets out how it will meet its main objective and what the members will do to achieve this. It must publish an annual report detailing what the Safeguarding Adults Board has done during the year to achieve its main objective and implement its strategic plan. And it must conduct any safeguarding adult review in accordance with Section 44 of the Act. The report takes you through the strategy, work undertaken, progress made, and plans for future years. During this reporting year, we recruited an independent scrutineer, Jane Geraghty, and you can see her report on page 153. The report starts with an overview from the Chair, Stuart Lackenby, the Director of Adult Social Services for WNC. This new year, it is going to be David Watts who takes over in the chair. The Delivery Board is chaired by Detective Superintendent Richard Tompkins, and he reports on the activity of that Delivery Board. There are further reports from each of the subgroups, the Communications and Engagement, Learning and Development, Quality and Performance, and Safeguarding Adult Review subgroups. It then goes on to feature a report from each of the partners. So there's Northamptonshire Clinical Commissioning Group, which is now Integrated Care Northamptonshire, Northamptonshire County Council, North Northampton, apologies, Northamptonshire Council, Northamptonshire Police, and West Northamptonshire Council. The report also takes you through the safeguarding adult reviews that have taken place. And for your information, it details in the report what would trigger a safeguarding adult review, which I will just take you through. They must be arranged when an adult in its area dies as a result of abuse or neglect, whether known or suspected, and there is a concern that partner agencies could have worked more effectively to protect the adult. The Safeguarding Adult Board must also arrange a SAR, a Safeguarding Adult Review, if the same circumstances apply, where an adult is still alive but has experienced serious neglect or abuse. So clearly this is a really serious responsibility of the board. And you will see on page 162 of your report the various safeguarding adult reports that have taken place during the year of 21 to 22. And if you want to find out any more information about those safeguarding adult reviews, you can find those on the NSAB, Northamptonshire Safeguarding Adult Board website. The purpose of those reviews is to look at what could have been done better and to make recommendations for the partners to implement to ensure that issues do not happen again. You will also see that of the SARs that took place and the actions that were to be put in place, virtually all of those have been carried out. If you go further, page 166 takes you through the strategic plan progress on each of the 3 priorities, which are making safeguarding personal, prevention and quality. I hope you will take assurance from this report that NNC and her partners are making significant progress in the safeguarding of adults in Northamptonshire, and that we are continuing to challenge ourselves to do better. I'd like to propose that full council note the Northamptonshire Safeguarding Adult Board Annual Report 21 to 22 as approved by the NSAB Strategic Board on the 6th of October 2022 at Appendix A, and to B, acknowledge the contribution that North Northamptonshire Council has made in supporting NSAB's achievements in keeping adults safe from harm. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Please may I see a seconder for this item, please? Councillor, thank you. Anybody wish to speak to this item, please? Councillor, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I welcome this report, Chair, and I would also like to say thank you to Jane Garrity, the independent scrutineer, because she does bring a wealth of knowledge and points us in the right direction. So I would like to extend thanks to her.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor John McGee.
Chair, thank you. Of course we welcome this report. It does beg the question, Chair, on page 153 from Jane, and I'm not sure how you pronounce that. The key issue raised from participation in number of... a key issue from the wide range of forms is lack of accessible mental health services. We know there's a problem there, don't we? The lack of mental health services. In fact, we only have to go down to the front door of the Cube where a middle 30-year-old man comes and sits down and causes problems, and we can't get somebody to look after him. And if we talk to perhaps the staff at the front, maybe that man will get help. But there's certainly a lack of mental health support services across the county, never mind North Northamptonshire. So it'll be interesting to see what comes forward in that, and perhaps an update at one of the APs, or indeed scrutiny when we do have public health scrutiny, or when we can have a more in-depth look at that.
Thank you, Councillor. No more to speak. Then Councillor Harrison again to finish off.
Thank you very much for the comments and questions from the floor. Councillor McGee, you're absolutely right to raise the issue of mental health care. Safeguarding and mental health care go hand in hand. And you're absolutely right that our independent scrutineer has drawn particular attention to this issue. And as a board, we will continue to scrutinise not only mental health care availability, but the role of safeguarding within that. You may be interested to know, on a sort of a side note, that I recently wrote to the chair of the new Integrated Care Board about mental health care services, and in particular some of the new vulnerable cohort that we have, indeed those fleeing war in Ukraine and those escaping from Afghanistan. And I got a very encouraging response from the chair of the Integrated Care Board. But absolutely, keep our feet to the fire, and I will look at what we can bring to the EAP in this respect.
Thank you, Councillor. We will now move to the vote, please.
Thank you, Chair. The vote is now beginning. About 10 seconds remaining. And the vote is now finished.
Thank you, Councillors. That's carried. Thank you. Agenda item 17, motions on notice. We've received 2 motions on notice as printed on your agenda papers. Please note that I expect all contributions to be concise, and please respect the time limits that apply. The mover of a motion has up to 5 minutes maximum. All other contributions are 3 minutes maximum. Thank you. Please may I say Councillor Hakewell to move his motion, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I will read it out because it's relevant, much relevant to the objective I have today. This Council resolves to scrutinise the current options for residents to choose a green burial in North Northamptonshire. Further, to develop a green burial ground policy to enable appropriate guidance to be given to interested operators with potential areas identified. Mr. Chairman, a green burial is defined as outside a traditional cemetery or churchyard. I trust that this can be a motion that the entire Council can actually get behind. Members will know that significant responsibility lies with the Council for the recording and making available of places to hold funerals and the traditional burial, cremation. And at least in the case of Rothwell Cemetery, which I'm proud to be the member serving that area, we do have a green burial ground where there have been, I think, 71 green burials since 2001. Many people do and will choose a green burial in the future, and the facilities for green burials are available in almost all adjacent councils, including West Northamptonshire at Cosgrove. Green burials are greener as they don't use the fuel required for the crematorium, and indeed some of the chemicals that are used in other forms of cremation or burial. Today is not about making the decision, but giving a clear direction from this Council that a piece of scrutiny can actually go forward and involve real proper scrutiny, involve residents, undertakers, religious groups, councillors, celebrants, and so on, and anyone with an interest in this particular subject. It's the one thing we will all have to choose at one point in the end of our life. So, Chairman, I hope that we will simply vote and agree with this, and that will filter out into the Council's processes, whereby in the future we may well find that we've got that green burial option. Equally, the Council does have a revenue function that comes from the crematoria, and if people do choose green burial, wouldn't it be great if this Council could find a suitable area and run and operate that green burial, and maybe increase it out into woodland areas and other areas where people can have memorials. So I so move. I thank my colleague councillor for seconding this, and I hope that the Council will send it off and it will be received, and we will do a great piece of scrutiny and give people that option at the end of their lives. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Please may I see Councillor Charlie Best to second the motion, please.
Thanks, Chair. I second the motion. Nothing to add to what Councillor Hakewell already said. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Jonathan Eakins, please.
Thank you, Chair. I personally will be supporting this motion. It's long overdue. We should have a green burial site within the North Northamptonshire. However, I'd like to make a note that if a housing developer decides to put a green cemetery and an allotment into their plan, that it's not overturned and allow them to turn that back into 350 housing positions as they did in Wellingborough. So I would do support that 100%, that we should be doing that, and we should provide the provision for it, even putting it into an SO 106 on a development plan for future developments of housing within North Northamptonshire. Chair, if I may also offer my apologies, I have to leave in a minute for pressing mayoral considerations. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor David Brackenbury, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'd like to thank Councillors Hakewell and Best for raising this motion, which I think is a thoughtful piece of work, and I think is something that we should very much welcome as one of the options that we have to develop a green burial, green burial policy as things go forward. Councillor Hakewell touched on it, that the concept of natural burial is over 30 years old. This is something that isn't new or particularly pioneering, but it is an option that is taken up in this area. There are the cemetery area in Rothwell, which Councillor Hakewell alluded to. There is also a woodland ashes scattering area at Warren Hill. And as Councillor Hakewell indicates, the first burial at the Rothwell site took place in October 2001, and there have been, I believe, 68 interments in that area, but of course those figures will, I've no doubt, change as time goes on. Green burials grounds tend to be privately operated, and we're not aware of any private green burial sites in Northamptonshire other than what's already been indicated. However, we are aware of a number of local authorities which have made entrances to green burial allocations outside the immediate Northamptonshire area. Councillor Hakewell alluded to the Cosgrove Green Burial Meadow near Milton Keynes, to the south of the district, and it's used by funeral directors from the Wellingborough and Rushden areas. There's also Greenhaven Woodland Burial Ground near Rugby, Yelvertoft Road, Lilburn, which is sometimes used by Northampton funeral directors. And I think many people will know about the Olney Green Burial Ground near Olney, just out of our area to the south. And again, Wellingborough and Rushden funeral directors quite often use that, as well as St Albans Woodland Burial Ground in Keeso. There's another one in Ketton, which is often used by Corby funeral directors, the Tithe Green Burial Ground. And there is a further one in Northampton itself, at Windmills Natural Green Burial Ground in Northampton. There are various others, but the point, I think, has been well made, that there are a number of green burial grounds in this immediate area, but there are not that many green burial grounds, well, at the moment, apart from the Rothwell site, which we've spoken about, there are not green burial grounds in Northamptonshire. Obviously, to work on this is a fairly complex piece of work. It involves planning policy, it involves extensive consultation with funeral directors, with service users. Well, what's a service user? It's people, who maybe...
Time,
okay. Well, hang on, just to wrap up. I'd like to propose a small amendment so that we can work with this matter with officers and with stakeholders, and this amendment reads as follows. This council resolves to explore with officers and other stakeholders the options to choose a green burial in Northamptonshire and the surrounding area, with a view to developing guidance to be given to interested parties and operators to locate options and identify whether suitable locations may be identified. Apologies, with your indulgence, Mr. Chairman, I've spoken a little over time, but I hope that this will be acceptable to the proposers and seconders of this very thoughtful motion. Thank you.
We just need a seconder for that.
Do we have a seconder for that, please?
Yes. Yes, I would like to second Councillor Brackenbury's amendment.
Councillor Hakewell should be able to...
Councillor Hakewell, please.
I don't really see any difference in the motion. It's just with some sadness that it has to be amended at all. It was perfectly straightforward, and I think there was a good consensus. Just disappointing on the face of it. I brought this up, and on the face of it, Councillor Brackenbury and whoever seconded it. I can vote against it, but I don't think what has been proposed has made any difference from what I put forward and what seemed to be getting a consensus. It does sadden me the way in which everything has to be moved around, and a member like myself, one independent, can't put something forward, gain consensus and move it forwards. Just very sad, I think.
Councillor Brackenbury, you're waving your hand about, so please, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Just a very quick clarification. Thank you, Councillor Hakewill. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to offend you in that way, but your motion says that the Council resolved to scrutinise the current options. I think it is probably better for us to actually get working on this piece of work, and without confusing colleagues and members of the public with the word scrutiny. This is not a matter for scrutiny as such. This is a matter for actually trying to investigate how we go about this in the best way. Thank you.
Councillor Tubbs, you had your hand up earlier.
Can I just go to...
Sorry, go on.
Councillor Hakewill, I'm just conscious that Councillor Hakewill hasn't seen the motion written down, so Paul's just going to come and give the motion as written down that we've been handed. It may be that Councillor Hakewill accepts the amendment to the motion with the consent of the seconder, and then we wouldn't need necessarily that motion.
In the meantime, Councillor Tubbs.
Well, I think let's just wait for Councillor Hakewill.
Yeah, but she did want to speak.
I know, but we've got to get into the debate. I think the amendment negates the motion.
Sorry?
The amendment negates the motion, so he could kick about that. Yeah. Because he's asking for scrutiny, he's asking for it not, it's negating what the whole purpose of it is.
Oh, right. Okay.
So there is an issue with the amendment, that's why I'm trying to get a bit of agreement.
Yeah.
If you won't agree to it, we could have a bit of an issue and allow it. Maybe Paul's will point that out.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you to thank you to Paul for explaining that. We use the term welcome scrutiny all the time, and lots of words are presented about welcoming scrutiny. In my motion, my view is that we should have a scrutiny and not a behind closed doors exploring with officers. As far as I'm concerned, and I say that's my sadness, I thought it was something that we could draw together. I noticed that the amended motion is printed, and therefore that amended motion must have been in presence in this chamber all afternoon, but no one took the courtesy to come to me and say, hey, Jim, this is what we're thinking. And, you know, it's just very sad. Now, as far as I can see, if I lose my motion, I won't accept it, and I would like to ask Councillor Brackenbury to withdraw his amendment. I won't accept it. If I vote against it, the record will show that I had this idea. I think it was a decent idea, and that for political purposes it was turned around. But it will still go through, clearly, because with or without the amendment, it'll still run. And I would still hope that in future years, there will be people who choose a green burial, either in a place where we have organised it or elsewhere in Northamptonshire. And that's what we get elected to do, to try and do things to improve life. So I would respectfully ask Councillor Brackenbury and whoever seconded it to remove theirs, vote for my motion. Let's put some scrutiny into it, and that will, of course, involve officers. Thank you, Chairman, for the advice as well.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Hakewell. The amendment to the motion takes away the ability to scrutinise, and I think what Councillor Hakewell has set out was that the motion was to scrutinise. So I think by removing the word scrutinise, we're negating the motion. So I would rule it that it wouldn't be allowed.
If I may, Chair. No, we are not doing this because of trying to make political points against you, Councillor Hakewell, or against you, Councillor Best. We're in fact not trying to do this for political purposes at all. As I explained, we are trying to remove the word scrutinise because of the potential for confusion with the Scrutiny Commission and that sort of body. Nobody, Councillor Hakewell, is taking away the fact that you thought of this first and it's your idea. Of course not, absolutely. And it is a good idea. As far as it being some form of operation behind closed doors and, you know, some sort of cabal, no, again, I'm afraid, Councillor, that you're mistaken, because everything that is done as this project begins to progress will be extensively consulted upon to anybody in this room and anybody outside this room, including those who may wish to avail themselves of the facility in due course. So, Councillor, I regret this too. I thought that it would have been a fairly straightforward, simple amendment, but anyway, such as it is, it stands, and I just don't see why we need to be sort of arguing about it particularly. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So the amendment as proposed isn't accepted because it removes the word scrutiny, so it negates the motion, in which case there can be another motion amendment on the table by a member, otherwise we go back to the substantive motion.
Councillor Tubbs.
Thank you, Chair. So I think it's really good that it's obvious that everyone is very interested in this motion, and a lot of people seem to think it's a good idea across parties. So, yeah, it's great that everyone has an opinion. I think it really... Councillor Hakewell's already said that a green burial is a lot more affordable than traditional burial or cremations. Green burial is also very natural. It's great for conservation, great for the planet, and I don't know how many of you have been to green burial sites, but they are really quite beautiful. But I think, yeah, really what it comes down to is they're great for the people and they're great for the planet. And however way we get there, as long as we're all on board with it, I think we should all support this motion. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor McGee. Just let him speak.
Thank you, Chair. I saw this motion, I thought, great, straightforward motion. We'll all put our hands up and vote for this. And somebody behind me said when the amendment came forward, it's toxic masculinity. And that's what it seems like, political positioning. It's a straightforward motion It would have went to scrutiny, they would have had a quick debate, and then the officers would have done the work. We all agree we want it to happen, but, Chair, I think maybe Councillor Heckful was cutting off his nose to spite his face. We could have moved forward with it, because we need to move forward with it. And the quicker we move forward with it, the better. And it's a great shame we're in this position because of so-called toxic masculinity. It's easy for them to say. And this political positioning. So let's all get our heads together and let them get on with it and bring this back as soon as possible.
Right. Please.
Thank you, Chair. Before the Chair proceeds with the rest of the debate, I would draw your attention to the fact that we're getting close to the guillotine. Therefore, there is a requirement for Council to agree to extend the guillotine, either to a time-specific duration or to the end of business. 5 o'clock. I think that's not extending the guillotine, to be fair, Chair. We need to vote on a resolution to extend.
Do we have a proposer for that? Councillor Smithers? A seconder?
Sorry, we have...
We need to know what we're proposing.
Sorry, just to be clear, we need to extend the guillotine because this meeting ends in 6 minutes. So we need an indication of what people want to extend the guillotine to. So, Chair, I think Councillor Smithers wants to come in.
Councillor Smithers, please.
Thank you, Chair. And I think it would probably be fair to just extend the time to the end of this motion. And I think it's been made very clear by the monitoring officer that the amendment to that motion from Councillor Brackenby doesn't stand. So I think we need to hear the substantive motion again and vote on it, and that should bring the conclusion to the meeting to an end. Thank you.
Is there a seconder to that? Councillor Howell?
Sorry, the proposal that's been moved is that the meeting be extended to cover this item on the agenda up to and including the vote, and then the meeting, if past 5 o'clock, will be terminated. Or
we don't speak to that.
Finished.
No, we don't speak to it.
We don't speak to that, Councillor McGee. We move straight to the vote, please.
Sorry, just to be clear, in the Constitution, you move the guillotine motion and you vote on it. Obviously, the motion has been moved. You have the capacity to vote against it, and we would consider a new motion.
Recorded votes.
Thank you. Yes, I can see.
Thank you. Through the chair, Ben, Callum, we've been requested a recorded vote.
That will be shown on the screen afterwards.
Recorded vote.
Okay, members, we shall proceed to the vote. Members, just have your attention.
Members, please, please, thank you.
Members, we are going to proceed to the vote now.
Sorry, just to repeat, the motion is that we conclude this item on the agenda up to and including the vote on the motion 1, and then if the meeting is past 5 o'clock, then the meeting comes to an end.
As Paul was explaining, we'll just extend that time shortly. So 10 seconds to go from now.
Can I tell members the result comes up after the vote's concluded, so...
Okay, the vote is now ending. Thank you.
That's carried, councillors. So now we go to the...
Chair, can I ask for a point of clarity, please? I'm new to this, so I just want to check my understanding so that going forward I can move in the right mechanisms. If a motion's put on the table, somebody has the ability to amend that motion, right? Why does that not include the guillotine?
Thank you, councillor. That will be answered for you.
Paragraph 10 of the meeting procedure rules has specific provision in relation to the guillotine, so it's separate to another motion. So it says, if the business of a council meeting has not been concluded 3 hours after its commencement, the chair will draw the attention of the meeting to the time and to this rule. The chair shall seek a mover and seconder and subsequently take the vote without discussion. So that's the constitutional rules.
Thank you. Now where do we go?
We go back to the debate.
Do we let him speak? Or?
So we're back onto the substantive motion that Councillor Hakewill
Yeah, so where do we go from there? Invite him to speak again?
I would say, I would just ask him to clarify what the motion is again,
okay.
And then we can debate.
Okay, we will now return to the substantive motion. Councillor Hakewill, would you like to clarify anything there, please?
No,
Excuse me, can you settle down, please?
I really don't feel there's any more to be said. My motion stands, and I would entreat everybody in this chamber to vote for it. Chairman, I have to actually be gone and pick my wife up to get her to the railway station, so I will leave immediately after this, or I could be one of the first people to experience one of these burials. Thank you. I hope everyone will...
Does anybody wish to speak to this, Councillor Brackenbury, please?
Thank you, Chair. As Chair of the Scrutiny Commission, I welcome any suggestions that we might look at scrutiny. We do have a work plan which members agree on. It's a shame that Councillor Hakewill hasn't decided this is important enough to bring up before today at full council. I would suggest if we want a green burial site, it would be best to get on with the policy and do it rather than scrutinise first and then give our suggestions forward. We've got exec members here, and if one of the exec members has agreed to look at this and look at the policy and get cracking on it, to me that might be the best way forward, I would suggest. But I'm always happy for members to bring any items they wish to look at to scrutiny, so the Scrutiny Commission members can decide which items they prioritise on the work plan.
Thank you, councillors. I think we're all pretty well know where we are now. Can we move to the vote, please?
Thank you, Chair. The vote shall now commence. There are 10 seconds remaining. And the vote is now closed. Thank you.
Thank you, councillors. That is carried. Close the meeting.
Chair,
thank you, councillors and officers.
Chair, clarification, Chair, that there is another motion. We have to withdraw that or it doesn't go forward to the next one. And we want to ensure it's the first motion on the next one, because cutting debate like this is a dictatorship and we're going back to that. No democracy.
Please don't call me a dictator, councillor.
Chair, I did not call you a dictator. I'm talking about your leader who proposed the motion.
I think it's impolite to call anybody a dictator within this building.
Yeah. Councillor, would you like to withdraw that comment?
No.
That concludes the business of this meeting, councillors, and I declare the meeting closed. Thank you.